Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am A. Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Julie Barth. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you just start us off by just telling me a little bit about yourself?
I am the mother of six. I have a daughter who has primordial dwarfism. She just turned 24 and she's 24 pounds. I lost my first husband to pancreatic cancer when we were in our 30s. And then I was in a 10-year relationship with a very abusive partner. So I actually ended up opening up something called the Colin James Barth Outreach, which is a charity that's committed to helping women-led households when they find themselves in time of crisis.
Thank you. Sounds like you're busy.
A lot less busy, yeah. I mean, there was a moment where, I had I only have two left at home.
Okay.
So actually, yes, actually now it's very quiet. But there was a time when I couldn't sit down without being like, oh, laundry, oh, dishes.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's funny trying to adjust to non-chaos,
Right.
where most people can't live in a chaotic state. I have a harder time trying to adjust to a peaceful state. So.
Yeah. I've never been that hectic probably, but yeah, I have days where my girlfriend, she gets frustrated because I'm just like, I can't sit still for very long. So I'm just like finding random little things to do. Sometimes it's like, okay, just relax, sit down, read, do something. You don't need to be moving all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it is hard though. I have a hard
Yeah.
time sitting still, and I don't know if that's something about me or something about just the conditioning of my life.
Yeah,
So I would
for sure.
imagine it's fine.
Yeah. What is your definition of inclusion?
I think that my definition probably changes over the years. Being, having a special needs daughter, I think that my definition of inclusion is to not always try and put people into whatever our stereotypes are. I had many
Right.
people throughout her entire journey that were so focused on her meeting and matching whatever their goals were for her.
Right.
And I would have conversations with them where I was like, you're actually asking for someone in a wheelchair, your expectations are for them to run a marathon
Mhm.
instead of just, making the best use of their wheelchair and putting them into a place where they can win in the wheelchair. So I think it's just we all have these standards that we create in our heads that are unrealistic, and we imagine they're whatever we think normal looks like. But I don't know that there is such a thing as normal. And trying to be more empathetic, I think, as a society is the key. But how do you get people to, not pity people with disabilities? Because I get a lot of that.
Right.
Um, yeah, I guess just like take each person and understand what they can give to the world rather than what you want from them as a
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I have a daughter, Cecilia. She's 22. She has epilepsy, cerebral palsy, uses a wheelchair. So yeah, there's been a lot of when the school kind of this is what it needs to look like, and it's not like no, like she's my daughter. It's our family. This is what we want her life to look like, or what we're thinking about. Not we don't need to exactly listen to what you say. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Or people see us out walking around like, oh, it's so nice. You guys go for walks. I'm like, she's my daughter. What else am I supposed to like? I can't take her outside. Like I don't understand. There's
Right.
just these weird things that people say to you, and it's like, hold on a second. If my son that can walk was out walking with me, you wouldn't say anything. So why are you saying it when she's out that it's nice or something?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so great that you're being a human being.
Yeah, like
um,
why wouldn't I
yeah,
go for
and
walks?
yeah, and I'm never, it never ceases to amaze me because I forget that she has disabilities. Like I forget that she's tiny,
Yeah,
and I'll take her places in the way that people like just got. And I know that they're not doing it on purpose. And I think they
right,
would probably they would probably say, "Oh, I didn't do that."
right.
It's natural for someone to kind of do a double take, like, "Did I
Yeah,
just see what I saw?" Um, but yeah, I think also that I've always tried to kind of encourage my children, like instead of staring, it's okay to ask a question if you have
Yep.
one, as long as you like phrase it in a way where you're curious, not approaching it like what's wrong.
Yeah.
I would much rather people come up and say like, oh, why is your daughter so small? Or, just
Yeah.
approach it. I
Yeah.
don't have a problem. And again, if I saw someone who has something slightly different than everyone else, I might tend to, do a double take. And it's
Yeah.
just natural. But the whole like, we're not going to address the fact that something's different about you. We're just going to dance around it
Right.
becomes a little uncomfortable. And it makes me think that right out the gate, you're saying that it's lesser than because you're trying to avoid the conversation of what it is,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever have situations where like a kid, let's say under 5, comes up and wants to like touch your daughter's wheelchair, and then the parents are like, "No, don't do that." Do you ever have that happen to you?
Oh yeah, oh, yeah. When Tatum was little, she looked like a doll. She
Okay.
was walking around. She was like 8 feet at a year old, maybe like, I mean, I'm sorry, 8 pounds at a year old, maybe
Okay.
even like 12 at 2. So she was half of what a normal sized
Sure.
child would be, but yet she was running around, and I would go
Okay.
pick my kids up from school, and there would be little girls like, touching her and like trying to figure out, is she real? And
Right.
I didn't think twice about it, but yeah, the parents like rush over and they're like, "Oh my gosh, don't do that, don't do that."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "She's not going to explode." Like,
Yeah.
and to her, I think that gave a why is there such a hands off with me? She didn't think anything of it. She
Yeah.
wasn't like, if she did, she would have said like, "Hey, can you not touch me?"
Yeah.
But instead it was almost like it isolated her, like, don't look at her, don't touch her, don't talk
Yeah.
about her, pretend she's not there.
Yeah.
And I think that's more isolating and lonely for people with disabilities than just, like, wow, that's a really cool wheelchair. Can I take a ride?
Yeah.
That's totally a reasonable thing for somebody to want to be curious about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that's just natural. The kids too, they're curious. It's something different. They don't like. They're not worried about what people's going to think if they go over there. They're just like, "What is this? I want to know what it is." And it's like if you're a parent and you stop them from doing that. I mean, I want them to know what my daughter's wheelchair is and what it's used for. So when they're older, if they see somebody, they're not scared of it. They can, they know what it's for and they know the person needs it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is fear. As adults, I think that we think if we don't acknowledge something or recognize that it's different, we're in some way being more inclusive because we're like, oh, we're just pretending that that's
Right.
not a thing. But I think instead that is limiting people to, oh, okay, well, anything outside of normal, we're just going to pretend doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And don't look at the wheelchair, don't look at her. She had a
Yeah.
trach for a while,
Okay.
like, and they would say, like, what is that thing? And the parents, would just be mortified. Oh, don't ask that. And I was like, do you want to know? I mean, as a parent,
Yeah.
maybe I'm sure that they were probably just as curious too, but
Yeah.
they were taught from their parents not to stare.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Don't stare, don't stare.
Yeah.
Which of course I don't want people gawking at my daughter, but I would
Yeah.
much rather them come up and say like, how does that work? What is that? Than to just be like, she's invisible. I'm going to pretend she's not standing there.
Yeah. For sure. What does resilience look like when life continuously throws unexpected challenges your way?
Um, I think resilience just is a way of, I think we're all here to learn something. And when the first time, I've been through many challenges, almost one after another. And the first time, you muddle through it and you think you're going to get to the end of it. And every new situation that comes, you're better equipped to not only
Mhm.
have the tools to say, okay, I'm going to tackle this, but you also have the perspective of being on the other side of it and saying, hey, I made it through the last hurdle. I'm not, if I take this one step at a time. And I think you learn not to look at the big picture of something like, I have to tackle this big thing. You learn that as long as you're making strides to get to the end of it or get through it, that's okay. You don't have to tackle a mountain in a day. Because I think when you feel that way or you think that way, everything becomes much more overwhelming. You go on autopilot. You stop really enjoying your life, and I think that's the key to it. Is hurdles keep coming, challenges will always be there, but taking it day by day and recognizing that you can't let something swallow you or be so consumed by something that you can't find the joy in the moments. I
Yeah.
think that's what resilience is continuing to live your life even in the midst of a crisis and recognize it. At some point it will be over, but you can't, lose years of your life trying to focus on something that might
Right.
not be fixable to begin with.
Yeah. Um, what were some moments of joy that you were able to focus on when you were going through your challenges?
I my kids have always been there kind of to pick me up.
Hmm.
I'm a mom first. So I think that no matter what was going on in my life, I could find, whatever those little moments were. I remember when Tatum was little, here we are, we lost her probably 5 or 6 times. They had to revive her and she had a trach and we didn't know from day to day if she was going to make it.
Hmm.
She hadn't ever talked because she had her trach. But I do remember one time there's something called a passing valve, which we didn't know about. It's funny when you're in the medical community and nobody is, you would think that someone would have introduced it by that point, but somehow we slipped through the cracks and nobody said anything like, oh, hey, she can talk if you use this
Hmm.
little valve. So I think the first time I put that on her and hearing her make a sound, something that as a parent, yeah, you're excited when your child says their first word, but like I hadn't even heard her like, cry or coo
Hmm.
or anything. So I think, to somebody else that might not seem like a big deal to hear her just like literally make a noise, but to somebody who's been through, hard times and thinking, that everything's really serious, finding those little moments like her making a noise, it is so amazing
Yeah.
to the person themselves. On the outside, they it sounds like more chaos in the home, but I think
Yeah.
you just don't take things for granted.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, my daughter, she's had 90-minute grand mal seizures, and I mean, I can remember there's been many days where it's just day hasn't gone well, and then she loves music, and we turn music on, and she starts singing along, and like in that moment when she's singing, like you forget about the last 24 hours that was not fun, and it's just like that those little things can make a huge difference, and for me at least, make you kind of forget about those bad things for a little bit, and realize what's important. So that's very true.
Yeah, I think you learn to focus your energies on things that you can control.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many things you can't control, and it'll
Right.
drive you crazy if those are the
Yeah.
things that like Tatum can't count to 10. And
Yep.
it sounds so like I remember when she was a little kid and I would be like one, two, three, and she'd be like one, fives. And I was like, oh my gosh. So and then it just dawned on me like, who cares if
Yeah.
she like, why am
Yeah.
I so stubborn and set on making her count to 10 when clearly she doesn't need 10 to exist and it's
Yeah.
frustrating her as much as it is me. So yeah, I think learning to adjust what your expectations are is also
Yeah.
makes you a much happier person when you stop trying to fit,
Right.
your idea of what you want them to be and start listening to what they want to be or what they find joy in too.
Yeah, for sure. What unique challenges do parents of children with special needs face both emotionally and logistically?
I don't think that anyone understands what goes on behind the scenes. Like like you said, you take your daughter for a walk and people are like, "Oh, yeah, you're out." And maybe that does mean that they understand a little bit of what it takes to get someone in a wheelchair out the door.
Hmm.
Um, but it's exhausting, if there's not a doctor's appointment, there's a physical therapy appointment. If there's not that, there's an
Right.
OT appointment. Then there's the checkups, and then there's the illness, and then there's we had to, try and find nursing. We couldn't find nursing.
Hmm.
I think the whole thing really can be, I should say, exhausting. But that's why I had Tatum, and then I proceeded to have four more children. And from the outside, people who were looking in thought I can't remember them saying like, "Why are you?" Almost like questioning, "Why are you having more children? Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you? Don't you have enough
Hmm.
already?" And again, it's about, every child that entered into my world, it made Tatum's disabilities and all of her issues and all of it made it less than. I try to only focus on the things that are really important in Tatum's world. Like I'll go to the doctor's office and they'll be like, well, have you had the swallow study? Have you had it? And I could, I could
Yeah.
be in a doctor's office for the rest of my life
Yep.
investigating what they
Right.
want me to investigate. Um, my biggest thing has always been like, why preserve a life if it's not worth living? So with a trach, I took her to pools. I mean, the medical establishment would have, probably reported me if they didn't.
Hmm.
But I find that it can be exhausting if that is what you immerse yourself in. If you constantly have to, there's this the medical community really likes you to be proactive with stuff. And I'm not saying that they're not wrong. But at a certain point, it's like, do you want your child to have a life where they're
Yeah.
out and they're doing things, or do you want to spend your time trying to preserve their life so that they never get sick, or
Yeah.
and I think it's a fine balance to walk, but you really could burn yourself out if you listen to all the things that people say that your child needs and what they
Yep.
should do. And so I think it's more like you said, deciding for yourself what you want for your child, and more asking and including them, because
Yep.
they have, Tatum will tell me what she
Hmm.
needs. Tatum will
Yep.
tell me what she wants to do. And I've learned to kind of let her guide her own life, because she's
Hmm.
24 now. And, people still talk when we go to the doctor's office, they'll still talk to me. And I'm like,
Yep.
she's right here.
Yeah.
She's 24. You can ask her,
Yep.
as if she does it. She's not aware of her own needs or wants
Yep.
or, hurts or whatever it is. It's like they defer to me. And I'm always like, she's the patient. Like,
Yep.
she can talk, and if she can, I'll fill in, but
Hmm.
let's talk to her first, and then we'll, whatever she's missing, I'll kind of
Yeah.
try and clue you in on.
Yeah. No, that still happens when we take Cece to appointments too. I mean, it's been getting better, knock on wood, where they'll look at her and ask her. But if it's many times they look at me, what's her name and birthday? I'm like, hey, Cece, do you want to tell them your name and birthday?
Yeah.
And she's now where she wants to, like, if we need to set up doctor appointments, she wants to call, and they can't. She's verbal but not super clear what she's saying, so let her say it first, and then we help them understand for sure. But yeah, that all that makes sense, and all the PTOT different therapies that she could have done. Like, she would have been going to school all day, and then would have been going till 10 o'clock at night to all the therapies. Like, that's not even fun. Like, you're just doing that stuff all the time. Yeah, just you have to figure out for you and for them and your family, like, what's the most important at this time. I mean, what kind of life do we want to have for sure?
Yeah, and I think they're probably, you probably could talk to a doctor or two that would say, that I was negligent or I didn't.
Yeah.
But that's always been my thing. Like, I'm not negligent.
Yeah.
I recognize that she needs to have a life outside of this. We all do.
Yep.
So we'll do what we need to do to keep her healthy. But as far as me, she's not going to run the Olympics any day soon. So
Yep.
I'm not going to throw all of her. And if that's, I think
Yeah.
you just have to prioritize and believe in yourself,
Yep.
because like I said, what I just said, there are doctors that will judge me for
Hmm.
what I do and what I say. But if I'm good with me and I look at her and she's
Yeah.
happy, then you have to learn to kind of block out what everybody is
Yeah.
saying to you if it's not making sense.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think, I don't know, where growing up somewhere, I kind of had this thought that doctors, teachers, people in those positions, like, they were God, or they knew more than I did, so I didn't question them until I had CC, and there were some things that happened. I'm like, nope, they're human just like me. They're just making they're making judgment call decisions based on the facts, or what they think the facts are, and I mean, it's okay to question them. And once I got to that point where I was willing to question. I mean, they don't trust me. They don't always like it when you question them, but I mean, I'm the parent. Like, if you're doing something that doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to ask the question. Whether you like that or not, that's on you, but I'm going to ask questions. And once I got to that point, it was much better, because then I just, like, how many years do we need to work on, coins in school? Like, I use a card. I don't ever have cash or coins on me. I mean, I know how to do it, but, like, why are we spending 5 years learning coins when she can use a card and buy stuff and not ever have to even look at coins? Like,
Yeah. Why are we frustrating her
yeah,
and spending her? Yeah. I'm with you. Like, what can't you do with AI? If she takes the phone
Yeah,
around with her,
yeah,
the phone can talk, and that's the thing is that I think that the school system is so set in what they already know
yeah,
that they're not looking at, so there's so much technology out there that kids can
right,
use. And, even with my kids who don't have any disabilities, I'm like, some of the things that they're still making them do, I'm like, when is there ever going to be a time when you don't have like a phone around you?
yeah,
And if it comes to that, we're all in some
yeah,
serious troubles.
yeah,
Like, we'll just survive the way we survive. And if you
yeah,
don't know how to, tell time old fashioned way, some things I think you just have to let go of and recognize, is it really worth wasting your energy
yeah,
on that?
yeah, for
And
sure.
to your point about physicians, I learned very early on who I wanted to deal with and who I didn't. It wasn't
Right.
about the letters behind their names. It wasn't, we had a world renowned surgeon. Well, he was the one that screwed up our throat and lied about it. So, I think that you learn what doctors, the ones that you question and don't take offense to it, are the ones that you want to stick with, because they themselves know that they don't have all the answers. It's the
Right.
ones who are so offended. I remember the
Yeah.
first time, and just for people out there, you can take your child out of a hospital. Like, I remember them saying, "Oh, you can't leave," and I really for many years believed I couldn't leave, and then I realized, like, no, I can go anytime I want. I'm not here captive.
Right.
That was one of the most eye-opening things in the world. Is, wait a second, I have rights while I'm here. I
Right.
don't have to listen to you.
Hmm.
um yeah, so, and again, I remember saying to one doctor, "Hey, listen, I can't go from room to room to room telling you what's wrong with each patient, but I can tell you what is wrong with my child, and that
Yeah.
will never change. You might be an expert in medicine, but I'm an expert in my child." So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had some situations where, I mean, she has epilepsy, so she was having frequent seizures, and I mean, I don't think you can ever get completely used to them, but I was at a spot where it wasn't like I could think and notice what was happening around me, and I noticed that they were, one time they treated it this way, and the next time it was this way, and I was like, hold on a second, what? Why are you doing it that way? And they did not like that, but I'm like, hey, last time they did it this way for this reason, and if you're doing it differently, that means the last time they messed up or something. So I asked the question, and man, they gave me a look and walked out, and we ended up having a meeting with the head of the ER to come up with a protocol so there wouldn't be that issue. But it was like, hey, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm paying attention and I'm asking questions. That's my daughter. Like, you either prolonged the seizure last time or messed it up. So like, gonna ask questions.
Right. And for your own, if
Yeah,
they have changed procedures, you want to know
yeah,
why.
for sure.
Like, oh, good, because now I know you
Right.
learned something new, then I can learn something new.
Yeah,
Yeah. And, I think that there's such a cloud of malpractice. They're so afraid
yeah,
you're going to sue. They're afraid of what they're going to say to you. I've gotten a hold of some records where it says, like, mom is volatile or whatever it was. And I'm thinking, okay, so you're reading this right as you're coming in, right there, no matter what I
yeah,
say, you're seeing me as volatile,
right.
or whatever. And they do that, and you
Yeah,
get labeled. And I was always like, being a mom, you should be upset if something
yeah,
goes wrong.
for sure.
I, yeah, I don't know how else you're supposed to behave when something goes terribly wrong in front of you and everyone's like, "Wasn't me," you
Yeah,
know? So it does cause a certain level of frustration, and you do say and do things that I think I probably never would have thought I would,
yeah,
because I did have this cloak. I always thought that they knew everything. I mean, they went to medical school. Clearly,
yep,
they must know more than me. Um,
yeah.
but sometimes they don't.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Switching up a little bit, many women feel ashamed or hesitant to leave unhealthy relationships. How can we change that conversation around that? Maybe can you talk a little bit? Does it add any complexity, like having, maybe a child with a disability for women in those situations, do you think?
Um, I think a lot of it is probably relying on the other person. The relationship I was in, he was never available. He was never there.
Hmm.
So my first husband, where he was, there 24, would never have left me, would have never have just walked out. The second one, when my daughter, who had primordial dwarfism, turned 13, she also came down with a rare connective tissue cancer. So she ended up having a whole bunch of surgeries at 13 as well, and he was just never there. I did see a lot of relationships in those situations. I think they either make or break you as a couple because you
Yeah.
either learn to trust one another and support one another, or you almost turn against one another. In an abusive relationship, I can imagine that you're already feeling so out of control. You're already feeling like you're not good enough because
Hmm.
there is so much of that in caregiving, like that you can't, they believe that you can save them so much so that you start believing it. And you're just setting yourself up to always be in a position where you feel like you're failing someone.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I could see where, you're giving everything to this child and then you're giving everything to this person who's telling you you're horrible. And it would make it you have a hard time figuring out what the truth is and
Right.
being so overwhelmed. I think leaving would be, very difficult because even though they're not supportive, you almost feel like you have somebody in the trenches with you, even though you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine if that were one of, if you were, especially if they were involved in helping pay for things, then you're caught in
Yeah.
a situation where I can't do
Right.
this alone, monetarily, physically. So I would, yeah, special needs children are different. If your child has different challenges, that just puts one more added. Oh my gosh, I can't do this on an already relationship
Right.
that teaches you, or you're conditioned to think you can't do things on your own. So.
Yeah. Do you maybe want to speak a little bit about your book that you wrote and then the kind of the work that you're doing with your nonprofit and stuff?
Sure. So I have three books. The third one I'm still in the midst of writing. The first one is called Notes from a Blackberry, and it is the story of Tatum. I was just coming off of traveling with her. She was 4. We had just started getting the trach out when Colin was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and we had 2 small children. So when I would take him to chemo, I would start writing Tatum's story because it was so incredulous, like one thing after another. And,
Hmm.
and I always say comedy of errors with absolutely no comedy included in it. So I was writing her story and then it kind of flowed into real time with him. So the book ends with his passing. So it's kind of like a testament. I didn't write it to, release it, but more so my children could learn of his courage and
Hmm.
Tatum's too, because I would have forgotten half the stuff that she went through. So that's Notes from a Blackberry. The second one, which will come out in the fall, is called From Blackberries to Thorns, and it's about my second relationship. And um, really, the reason why I opened up the Colin James Barth Outreach, it's an organization where I've been in 2 different positions now, probably several, where you all of a sudden become head of household, whether that's through illness or
Hmm.
through divorce, and you're really left to just spend on your own, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, and everyone acts like you don't have any work experience when you've been doing the hardest work possible and
Right.
and put your life on hold. And then you're forced to try and find a job when your kids need you the most, and you can't get help from anyone until you have nothing. It's like
Hmm.
you have to give away everything, and then they're like, okay, now we're ready to help. So
Right.
our organization is based on trying to provide like a safety net for women to stay where they are and maintain and build a lucrative future and stability, rather than allowing them to fall into poverty and then saying, hey, okay, we're here now.
Right.
So we do things like mentoring programs. We try and help. We're trying to partner with other companies to find more, remote learning jobs that are really
Hmm.
lucrative and have highlight somebody's experience, because as a mom, you're gaining a whole lot of experience all those years that you're at home, and really just legal assistance. Just when crisis hits, you are in the mode of I do, and you just don't even know what you need. So
Hmm.
we're almost like a concierge service where you come to us, we figure out what you need when you don't even know what you need. We
Sure.
pick it apart and we provide the services. If we can't provide them ourselves, then we network with people and set you up so that we just give you a list and we're
Yeah.
like, do, so that you have it in front of you instead of just like banging your head and doing research and getting
Mhm.
nowhere. And so that's we're still in our infancy, but that's kind of our goal. We have many goals, but one is to kind of take each situation as it comes, figure out what you need, help get you there, and weed through all the eligibility requirements so you know what you can and can't go for.
Yeah, that's great. When I was looking at your website, I think I got over to your daughter's website. Looks like she creates art and sells it. Is that what she does?
She does. So she's a
Okay.
self-taught artist. You know, when her art's really good, but then when you consider the backstory of everything she's been through, I saw what she was doing one day and she just started drawing and I was like, wow, that's really amazing. So I built the website for her and then it was like, and then I read a book and I was like, people should know of all of her courage. So
Yeah.
that's when I released Notes from Blackberry. So it's all in a kind of a roundabout.
Sure.
The proceeds from her art go to fund the charity. Her art, she does custom work. So if you send in a picture, she can,
Okay.
draw it for you. Or if you like any of the things on the website, you can put it on any of our products, like a, cup or whatever. So
Sure.
um, I designed it. If you're having any issues with it, I'm the one that mans it. So feel free to reach out. You will get me because I'm the only person in the organization right now, besides
Yeah.
some board members. So you're not
Yeah.
getting my assistant, although I'd love one. I don't have one.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw some of the drawings. They're really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And a really cool story is we went to an estate sale and there was an art, I was just about to ready to give up on it. And there was they had all these art things going on. I'm sorry, they were selling, it must have been an art gallery that went under. So they donated like
Oh.
thousands of these beautiful antique frames. So
Oh.
I've been, little here and there trying to mat and frame them and just give them a little extra, uniqueness to she, as you can see, she kind of likes creepy stuff. She's like a Halloween fan. So
Yeah.
we're trying to combine all of her stuff to make it, a little more her. So,
Yeah. That's
and she
awesome.
also does custom jewelry. So
Oh wow. Awesome. What is one tip you can share to help our listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
I think just stop worrying about what other people think about you. As a special needs parent, stop worrying about what other people think about your child and just trust your gut. We all have that internal alarm system that's trying to tell us where and what we need to do and be. And sometimes we just resist and fight against it because it's easier or
Yep.
doing something different is scary. There's predictability in what you do, but it doesn't provide you safety. And it certainly doesn't help you grow. So I think just take chances to do things that might not work out. Because if they do, you're great. If they didn't, then you just kind of pivot and try again. But just stop worrying, stop doing what you're doing because you're worried about what people think or how they'll judge you or how they'll see you.
Yeah. That's a great tip. I'm 48 and still working on that though, so I'm every day
I
trying
think
to be
everyone
better.
is. Yeah. I don't know that there, I mean, if there is one person out there that doesn't care at all, that's probably not good either. So
That's right.
yeah, I think you have to
That's
have a
true.
certain degree of I care in there. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
You can go to my website at juliebarthauthor.com, and there are different tabs for the charity, Tatum's art. Again, if you want to get involved, there's a form, sign up for a newsletter,
Sure.
just learn more about us. So, and all my social media accounts are on there as well.
Sounds good. Ready for the last question?
Yeah,
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
no,
Well, that was fast.
yeah.
I live by Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So I've been asking all of my guests whether or not they like it, and it's usually super fast yes, super fast no, or I haven't tried it. That's usually the
Well, I haven't tried it either, so I have to
oh
be honest about that. Yeah, yeah. It just looks like something my mom. I'm from the Midwest too, and
yep
my mom would make the most horrible concoctions. And I'm sorry she never used spam, but it sounds like something that would have been on our table.
yeah
Um, so I shouldn't knock it until I try. I'll take it back, but I don't think I'm going to try it.
yeah might not try it yeah.
I don't
Well,
think so.
thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.